we live in an age based on science and technology with formidable technological power. And if we don't understand it, by we I mean the general public, if it's something that, oh, I'm not good at that, I don't know anything about it, then who is making all the decisions about science and technology that are going to determine what kind of future our children live in? There's two kinds of dangers. One is what I just talked about, that we've arranged a society based on science and technology in which nobody understands anything about science and technology. And this combustible mixture of ignorance and power, sooner or later, is going to blow up in our faces. I mean, who is running the science and technology in a democracy if the people don't know anything about it? And the second reason that I'm worried about this is that science is more than a body of knowledge. It's a way of thinking, a way of skeptically interrogating the universe with a fine understanding of human fallibility. If we are not able to ask skeptical questions, to interrogate those who tell us that something is true, to be skeptical of those in authority, then we're up for grabs for the next charlatan, political or religious, who comes ambling along. It's a thing that Jefferson laid great stress on. It wasn't enough, he said, to enshrine some rights in a constitution or a Bill of Rights. The people had to be educated, and they had to practice their skepticism and their education. Otherwise, we don't run the government. The government runs us.
That was the late, great Carl Sagan, and this is Emotive. I'm your host, Dan. If you are a new listener this week, this show is about technology, video games, and topics that interest me. Speaking of which, this week's topic is the UFO phenomenon and Bob Lazar, which is why I played that Carl Sagan clip at the beginning. When people hear about UFOs, most will get a little chuckle, and the X-Files theme song inevitably starts playing in their head. I'd encourage you to listen to this episode with a skeptical mind and consider the possibilities. These stories of UFO sightings are popping up in the news, and the evidence is building with each one. Do you believe? That's for you to decide for yourself. To help me make sense of it all, my friend Adamfellow joins me on the show today. I've known Adam for many years, from the first time he found my channel during the DayZ mod times, to when we met at a PAX South conference in Texas, to the many times we've had a laugh playing games together. He's a Twitch creator, a talented musician, and a free thinker when it comes to the UFO phenomenon. Due to the nature of this topic, there isn't a normal introduction for Adam at the beginning of the episode, but I hope that you will follow him on his social media at Adamfellow on Twitter and Twitch. Enjoy the episode, and all relevant links are available on our website, pod.co/emotive. I know the reason why I wanted to talk to you is because I recently just saw all the stuff in the news about UFOs. I guess some more credible claims than have really come out in the mainstream media anyway. It's kind of weird that it is a topic in the news, because usually the news is kind of tongue in cheek about all this stuff. They don't necessarily see UFOs as credible.
Commander David Fravor still can't explain what he saw that day in 2004. He was flying west of San Diego on a clear day over a smooth ocean. He saw the object, waves breaking over it, something hovering above it.
It's randomly moving north, south, east, west, just random, just stopping, going the other direction, like you could do with a helicopter, but a little bit more abrupt. It looks like a 40-foot long tic-tac with no wings.
With the weekend release of the tape, Fravor is now a heavily demanded interview.
Personally, I think it was not from this world. I honestly believe that I don't believe we would have a technology like that.
Fravor says he and his four-man team tracked the object for several minutes until it just disappeared. Was he ordered to keep it quiet?
I did not have to be quiet. Yes, the superiors knew, everyone on the ship knew. Over time, you start asking, why didn't anyone ask about this? This was a unique event. And it just kind of went away. And I really didn't talk about it for years.
13 years have passed, and when asked, could it have been a light or reflection, this seasoned pilot says no.
This is a completely different technology, and I don't know what it is. I honestly don't.
Now, the Pentagon program cost at least $22 million over a period of 5 years before it was shut down in 2012 because the Pentagon simply wanted to pursue other priorities.
It's a good thing, really, because really the only stuff that's popular about, the UFO phenomenon now is like Ancient Aliens and all these kind of silly shows on History Channel. But this is like, it's pretty damn credible. It's coming from a news source, if you want to call them credible, but it's different. It's a different way to eat it.
Well, yeah, there's articles on New York Times, there's stuff on CNN, there's stuff on Fox News. It comes from all sides, the stuff from the Navy pilots, and some of these UFOs. Here's some of the traits that the Navy pilots have said.
Yeah, no exhaust, none. It has to have, any conventional, engine, combustion engine. It has to have thrust to push it forward.
Yeah.
None of these have that.
Yep. So let me just read off of, this is from history.com, what it says. There's 5 observable traits that these UFOs have had. Anti-gravity lift. Unlike any known aircraft, these objects have been sighted overcoming the Earth's gravity with no visible means of propulsion. They also lack any flight surfaces such as wings. In the Nimitz incident, witnesses described the crafts as tubular, shaped like a Tic Tac candy. So the Nimitz is that Tic Tac UFO. Sudden and instantaneous acceleration. These objects may accelerate or change direction so quickly that no human pilot could survive the G-forces. They would be crushed. In the Nimitz incident, radar operators say they tracked one of the UFOs as it dropped out of the sky at more than 30 times the speed of sound. All right, so it goes on to say that this squadron commander, David Fravor, likens its rapid side-to-side movements, later captured in the infrared video, to that of a ping pong ball. Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
Was that on radar?
Yeah, so the radar operators on the USS Princeton tracked the objects accelerating from a standing position to traveling 60 miles in a minute, which is 3,600 miles an hour. And the FA-18 Super Hornet fighter jet typically reaches a max speed of Mach 1.6 or 1,200 miles an hour. So they're traveling, 3 times as fast as some of the faster fighter jets out there, and kind of darting around like a ping pong ball.
Yeah. I mean,
it's hard to kind of justify like what exactly are these things.
Yeah, and that's why I think they're treating it as a national security issue, mainly because they don't know what the hell it is. They're not going to just be like, "Oh, it's aliens." Well, no, they don't know. The smart thing is to say we don't know.
Yeah,
which is strange.
and they actually have recently changed the distinction of what a UFO is, which the typical acronym means unidentified flying object, and now they're known as, aren't they known as
no, UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon.
Yep, the UAPs.
I believe that's what it is. Most positive.
I don't know why they need to change the acronym, maybe to kind of differentiate it from the old acronym, which was kind of seen to be utilized by a lot of cranks and people taking pictures of birds and stuff in the air and calling them UFOs.
Yeah, someone throws like a plate in the air, gets the right light. Oh, it's a UFO, man.
Totally not a frisbee. Yep.
UAP sounds better too, I think.
So where did you get this sort of fascination with UFOs? Because I got it as a young kid as well.
Man, I can't pinpoint. I mean, I've always been like, my dad is the biggest airplane fanatic, or just aviation in general. Like he's built model airplanes since he was like a little kid, and he has all sorts of those model airplanes in the garage hanging up from the ceiling. And we went to air shows, all sorts of air shows when I was a kid. So I guess stuff flying in the air and aviation was interesting. And then I don't know, just somewhere along the way, like the UFO thing, like it's mainly the technology behind it that really interests me, just because it's not your conventional, combustion engine or whatever it may be. It's something we don't know what it is, and it can fly around. Inertia doesn't matter. It can take these right angle turns at 3,000 mile an hour, no problem. It's how can you not be fascinated by that?
Right? Yeah, the implications of there being this technology that exists, that's exciting. Now the alien side of it, that's much harder for me to believe.
Yeah, you're right.
Just because where's the evidence?
True. I'm an optimist as well. Like I'd like to think, well, to me, it's impossible that they don't exist, right? In my opinion, just because.
Aliens, you mean?
Correct. Or some sort of intelligent life.
Other intelligent life in this universe.
Yes. To me, it's impossible that it doesn't exist.
Or in another universe, rather.
Yeah. There is no way we are the only ones here. There is no way. And these aircraft, right? The thing that powers them doesn't exist here on Earth, or at least that we know of.
I mean, all of the world governments, the military, they're always on the cutting edge of technology because the defense departments have pretty much the most money to spend. So any sort of cutting edge technology gets funneled through the Defense Department first. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just how it goes. I mean, sometimes it goes to the space programs first, and then it makes its way into a Defense Department. But
I would think it goes to defense and then space.
Defense first.
That makes more sense to me.
But all I'm saying is, if it was possible, the militaries would be utilizing it for sure.
Well, true. Or it's a whole nother thing. Or they don't know about it.
They don't know about it.
It's privately owned. That's something I've thought about.
Huh. You think there's a possibility that there's sort of these super rich elite people that are keeping this technology under wraps because they want to have it in case the shit hits the fan type of deal?
It's entirely possible. Huh. I can't rule it out because there's been reports of billions of dollars just missing from the Pentagon. Just where did it go? We don't know.
Yeah.
It could go into these projects, these black projects that have these craft, or we might have already reverse engineered it, and so we're making more. That's where this money's going. But it's a big rabbit hole to go down, really.
Yeah, we start to get in some crazy conspiracy theories if we're going to start talking about like the money that went missing right before September 11th and all that stuff, I mean, it's really probably not going to be the topic of this conversation, but it does make you think that that's sort of the beauty of talking about UFOs and this hypothetical technology is that it's not crazy to think that anything is possible because we've seen how technology has evolved over the last just 20 years. Just imagine
even since we went to the moon.
Yep. That was just about 50 years ago,
Yeah, and I always like to say, what year did we come up with the automobile? It was like the 1900s, 1910. And then, so you got, about 40, 45 years. And then we got the fucking rocket ship going to the moon. Okay.
Yeah, man.
That was like 1950, 1960.
Yeah.
I don't have it right in front of me.
It's more like, so the first automobile was patented in 1885. So from there, you could think considerably about 75 years from the first automobile to where we were landing on the moon, and not to mention communicating with the astronauts in space.
Yes. And then the gap from then to right now, there's been really nothing besides we sent a rover to Mars. We sent, satellites to Pluto and we take pictures.
Yeah. And do we really believe that technology has plateaued at this point?
Hell no.
The evidence only points to the fact that we're exponentially advancing technology. It's just you wonder how much of it we know about versus how much of it we're going to find out later.
And I think it ties in with the UFO phenomenon.
Explain.
I think that the technology behind these craft, right? The power source is basically infinite. It doesn't end. Like it can power these craft forever. It doesn't run out. Think about that. And then think about fossil fuels. If we had that energy source that power these craft to the public, we wouldn't need fossil fuels anymore. That's a $1 trillion industry, maybe?
Yeah. So what you're saying, are you saying that if this technology were to come out, it would ruin a lot of people's days. So there's incentives to keep this stuff under wraps.
Well, that, and it might be a national security thing because there's another deal. If this technology, if they say, "Oh, we have this," whoever has those aircraft can literally rule the earth.
Yes,
no one else will have it. You can do whatever they want.
Okay, so explain this hypothetical technology that could exist that propels these UFOs or
UAPs. Yeah. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but as from what I know to believe, a man, Bob Lazar, came out like in 89, 88? 89 came out with this. Wasn't really a confession, just more of a video saying that he worked at a base called S4, which was a part of the Area 51 constellation or whatever, and he in great detail explained what he worked on, and he worked on the propulsion of these quote-unquote alien spacecraft, how the propulsion worked and what it was powered by. And it was powered by an element called element 115. I don't know the name of the element. I'm not a scientist.
Well, let me just backtrack a little bit. You want to know the story of Bob Lazar and sort of like all of the parts of it. So you're saying that this technology kind of all leads back to Bob Lazar's declaration that he made in 1989 during the interview he did with George Knapp.
Yeah, that's all we know about it, really.
Okay. So let's kind of tease this out piece by piece, because I've looked into the UFO phenomenon. The most that I've looked into has been through this Bob Lazar declaration, because his story is sort of the most credible, it's the most believable, him as an individual. However, there's some stuff I'm going to say at the end to caveat all of it. But to start out with, he came out in 1989, and there was this interview that he did with a local news station. All right, so Bob Lazar in 1989 appeared on this local Las Vegas television program hosted by George Knapp. But Bob Lazar featured on this program, and he lays out this S4, this government facility that's located as kind of an offshoot of Area 51, which everybody kind of knows.
Yeah, it's south of it in the Pampoose dry lake bed, I think.
What he said that he was hired to do was to research the propulsion of these flying saucers that were all located in this giant hangar. And he said there were 9 of them. And
they all varied in shape and size.
Later, he got to see the real thing.
When I was let in, it was the first time I saw the sport model in the hangar sitting down, and I was told they could have walked me in the front door, but they purposely wanted to walk me by it. I was told not to say anything and just keep my eyes forward and walk past the disc into the office area. And I did, and as we went by it, I just kind of stuck my hands on it just to run it alongside the thing, and that was about the smallest time. After that, I got to see it actually lift off the ground and operate.
But you also, in between that, you saw more than one.
Yeah. The hangars are all connected together, and there are large bay doors between each one. And there were 9 total that I saw, each one being different.
And they kind of appeared to be they almost appeared to be like if you were to line up a bunch of car models by year. It almost appeared to be like the older, less advanced to the newer, more advanced. At least that was my recollection of it.
It could be. Yeah, he called the one he worked on the sport model. So
the sport model, right? And he was able to go in and kind of inspect the interior of this thing at one point. All of the surfaces were smooth. There was no like right angles anywhere. There's really no control panels to be seen, and it was meant to fit like a very small human.
Yes.
It wasn't meant to be flown by a human, that's for sure. You get to witness these craft being tested. He got to see them fly up and down, left and right, just a basic test. And when they would take off, like when they would leave the ground, it would kind of leave this like electrical arc.
Yeah, like an electrical discharge at the bottom, like a buzz, at a transformer.
Yeah.
And then he said it kind of goes away after a little bit.
And then there's no visible sign of propulsion beyond that. But what he was hired to do was to try to reverse engineer the propulsion.
According to Lazar, his employer was the United States Navy. He says he and other government employees would gather near EG&G, fly to Groom Lake, then a very few people would get into a bus with blacked out or no windows and drive to S4. When you get off the bus, what do you see?
It's a very interesting building. It's got a slope of probably about 30 degrees, which are hangar doors. And it has textured paint on it, but it looks like sand. It's made to look like the side of the mountain that it's in, whether it's to disguise it from satellite photographs or what.
He says he was never told exactly what he'd be working on, but figured it had something to do with advanced propulsion. On his first day, he was told to read a series of briefings and immediately realized how advanced the propulsion was.
The power source is an antimatter reactor. They run gravity amplifiers. There's actually 2 parts to the drive mechanism. It's a bizarre technology. There's no physical hookup between any of the systems in there. They use gravity as a wave, using waveguides, almost like microwaves.
It took a while, Lazar says, before he actually saw one of the flying discs. However, there were hints everywhere.
Right. They had a poster, and it looked like a commercial poster almost, like it was lithographed, and you could buy it at a Kmart or something. But they were all over the place, and it had the disc that I coined the term the sport model. was lifted off the ground about 3 feet at Area S4 on the dry lake there, and the caption on the bottom said, "They're here."
And basically, this element 115 that we don't. I don't exactly remember the quote of what he said, like how he was told about it. I think that his partner there, they had already they either had a sample of it from something. Supposedly the guy that Bob was replacing had died from some sort of a small nuclear explosion from one of the...
Yes, there was a couple people, they tried to cut into the reactor that powered the whole thing, and it exploded. He said it yielded like a small nuclear explosion.
All right, so this element 115 allowed the craft to warp space and create its own gravitational field to pull the craft into space. And the way that Bob explained it is that when this flying saucer would want to propel somewhere, it would kind of lift itself into the air, kind of like it would be like the front wheels of a car folding up and the car lifting up, and then it propelling itself forward. So it's like clearing a path using these so-called gravity waves, and then propelling itself to that
lifts,
point.
Like on its side, like on the bottom, like your typical UFO, the aliens beaming up people, that little beam that's at the bottom, it tilts that forward, and that leads it forward. It follows like a gravity distortion.
So the Bob Lazar story continues. He's working at this place, S4. He's not able to tell his wife or anybody anything. He has to keep everything under wraps. He's under surveillance, and then he kind of notices that they're watching him a little bit closer. But basically, he starts to get a little suspicious about. Well, I think that they started questioning him on the site. They started questioning him a little bit closer when he was coming to work and that sort of thing. Bob Lazar starts to get suspicious about the surveillance that he's under, right? He starts to confide in some of his close friends about his job. And, in order to kind of prove his worth, he takes some of his friends out to where they're doing these tests.
I wish I was one of those
these
friends.
Test flights. Takes them out to the desert to view some of these test flights, which he knew happened on Wednesday nights. So they go out there, and there's footage. They filmed 3 of these test flights, only 2 of which have footage. The third time they went out there, they were caught. They were caught and kicked out by the military that were on site. Oh, that's right. Yeah, I guess they were arrested by military police or something like that. In the way that, the way that he described it in the documentary on Netflix was that, it's pitch black and they're watching these lights in the sky and how they dart around, kind of dancing around, right? Similar to some of the stuff that the Navy pilots have described, this object that seems to travel any direction that it wants at incredible speeds. Of course, the footage now is VHS quality. It's not anything that can be, it's really hard to know what shape it is. It just looks kind of like a ball of light. Anyway, so super pitch black. And I think they had brought like a motorhome out there. So they're not being super stealthy. They're out there basically tailgating this test flight. They felt pretty comfortable. And at a certain point, one of the military police, like some part of their gear kind of fell off and hit the ground, and it rolled up and kind of hit someone's shoe or something. And they were like, what's that? And then they lit it up, and all the guys are standing there watching them.
Yeah, they were just standing right there. Yeah,
they're standing right there, and they arrested him. They come to find out, I'm not sure how Bob Lazar found this out, but the government had been, listening to all their phone calls. It turns out that his wife had been cheating on him with a flight instructor.
That's right.
Yeah, and
I forgot about that.
That's why he was kind of being watched closer. Yeah, after that happened, that's where the interview comes in. He then appeared on TV with George Knapp, who's the guy from Las Vegas, and they recorded this interview where he detailed all of this stuff. They kind of sat on that interview for about 6 months, and they aired it eventually. And in the interview, he went by the name Dennis. He didn't go by his real name. And then I think not too long after, he appeared on television with his face and his name and everything, and kind of went into further detail.
And as far as I know, he did not want that video to come out.
Yeah, there's a story where he claims that at the time when they were about to air, he was having second thoughts, and they had this like wrestling match over the tape before he was going to go put it in the...
and they wrestled or whatever.
I don't know if I believe that.
That was kind of goofy.
All those interviews were put up. Anytime there's any sort of quote unquote evidence that there's UFO sightings, it generates huge ratings for whatever news organization puts it out. And of course, the story was picked up by national news. There was even a news story done in Japan about it, which, news doesn't travel the same way it does now. This is before the internet, or before the internet was used by consumers and businesses and all these other things. So it was a huge deal, and since then, Bob Lazar hasn't strayed away from the story. He's been telling the same story for 30 years. At a certain point, about 10 years ago, give or take, he was approached by a guy, Jeremy Corbell, I think is his name, the documentarian, this guy that makes all sorts of sort of conspiratorial type of documentaries. And he agreed to work with this shyster. I'm not a big fan of Jeremy Corbell.
Oh my gosh, I'm not either.
There's something about him just bothers me.
He doesn't seem, okay.
He doesn't seem very credible. He doesn't. Yeah, he just. There's
That's
something about him.
He doesn't seem genuine. He's all about his product, which I understand. But lighten up a little, man.
Yeah, he just something about him just screams bullshit. It just seems like he's trying too hard to.
He's using Bob, in my opinion.
Yes.
To get money for him. Obviously, Bob doesn't make a dime.
Yeah, you wonder about that, but let's continue kind of what happened to Bob Lazar after that stuff aired. You didn't really hear much about him, but Bob Lazar started his own business called United Nuclear, and what they do is they sell scientific equipment and supplies and some of these elements that you can't find just about anywhere else. And he's been raided by the government multiple times. He was raided.
Apparently, he got out of S4 with some element 115.
Right. That's what the conspiracy theorists would like you to believe. Yeah. But in reality, what they were after was
that I don't know.
Was after sale documents for this element.
I'm going to ask one more question of our guest, Bob Lazar, non-UFO related. Then we will take our break, get that out of the way, and bring on our other guests, Gene Huff and John Lear. Bob, the last time we had you on, it was not that long after you had an encounter with the government there in New Mexico about something you were selling online. And the reason it became national news is because this particular element was used apparently to kill a Russian spy. And so national news networks start asking questions about the element. I think it's polonium. And lo and behold, they find this guy in New Mexico who's selling it, right?
Yeah, they, I guess, not knowing very much about polonium-210, which was the isotope that was used, they went and Googled it. And if you, I don't know if it's still the case, but I bet it is. If you Google polonium-210, United Nuclear comes up, and probably our sales page with it right on there. We sell a wide variety of radioactive isotopes, polonium-210 being one of them, and not knowing much about it, so they pretty much just came to us and said, "What's the deal, and how could you possibly be selling this?" And we're really flipping out over the whole concept.
I haven't heard about this.
Yeah. So essentially, these FBI raids were to pick up sales documents for some of these radioactive elements that Bob Lazar sells through his business, United Nuclear. Now, this is linked to some of these elements being used to kill Russian spies.
Oh my God!
So it even sounds sketchy on the surface. It sounds crazy, but let me just read this. This is from Newsweek. The radioactive poison that was used to kill Russian KGB spy Alexander Litvinenko, which is such an American way to pronounce that, is available online and on the cheap. United Nuclear's Scientific Supplies, Bob Lazar's company, aims to put the fun back into science. According to his website, sells 0.1 microcurie of the substance for just $69 plus shipping and handling. A microcurie is a measurement of radiation. So there you go.
Really?
There's the FBI's. That was the FBI's cause to raid him. This is one of the first raids, right?
Of course.
And then the recent one was kind of a similar thing, I
It
believe.
seems silly to me, doesn't it? Like,
Well, it's one of those things, man. It's like they kind of want to perpetuate the fact that the government is after Bob. I don't even know if it's necessary for me to look up the other one. But in the documentary, they make it seem like this raid that happened in, I think, 2017, that it happened because they were making this documentary and they were about to put it out, and him and Jeremy were in the backyard talking away from all of the other possible surveillance, and then the next day he gets raided. What a coincidence. And then there's these text messages that they show. This is like at the beginning of the documentary. These text messages are going back and forth between them, like, oh my god, I'm getting raided. It's like, really? I can't believe this. And it's funny how little detail that Jeremy put into this documentary, because if you look on the phone, the date on the front screen of the phone says July 19th, and then the text messages that are coming through on the phone, it says like August 25th,
Yeah.
And I know that it's staged for the documentary, because he wasn't like filming the phone as the text messages were coming in.
Yeah.
But still, it just kind of shows like sort of the dramatization of some of these things that happen. And the reality is, okay, he didn't get raided by the FBI because he supposedly stole some of this element 115 on his way out, That doesn't really make sense when you think about it. But it does make it.
He is a dedicated scientist. So for me, in my opinion, just his general curiosity and the fact that he came out with, this bombshell of an interview and video, and then he took his friends out to see it. He was willing to do that as well. Tells me he might just be willing to try and sneak off with a little bit of this shit because he's that curious, and he's a damn dedicated scientist, it seems like.
So, and the fact that he was on that interview show was kind of a coincidence, because, well, George Knapp had somebody else lined up for that day, and when they weren't able to show up, John Lear contacted Bob Lazar and asked him if he could be on this show.
A once secret air base in the Nevada desert is marking an unofficial anniversary today.
Area 51 was one of the most secretive places on the planet, but that anonymity vanished forever because of what happened 25 years ago. A controversial electronics whiz told a fantastic tale during a TV interview, and the story still reverberates today.
The I-Team's George Knapp played a part in what became an international sensation. He's here with an update.
Setting the stage, Dave, you might not know this, but 25 years ago, a young anchor woman named Paula Francis and I were prepping for the 5 o'clock news when we learned that our scheduled live interview had canceled. We placed a call to aviator John Lear to ask if he could get a friend of his to fill the spot, a guy who reportedly worked out near Area 51 and had seen flying saucers out there.
So that was kind of the reason why he ended up being interviewed, not necessarily this like backstory of him like having to tell his story. So hearing some of that did shatter my illusion a little bit with Bob Lazar. And the fact that he seems like a credible guy, his story seems very compelling, his motivations don't appear to be for money. It just makes me wonder, like, at the end of the day, all this stuff laid out, all of these elements to his story, and the fact that he's able to tell all of them very clearly, never strays from any parts of it. He does have a scientific background, obviously. Supposedly he had a degree from what, MIT?
Yes.
He had a degree from
Caltech, I believe.
Caltech.
And a lot of the stuff he's said over the years has come to be true. He talked about to get into S4, there was like some sort of hand scanner that, scans the bones of your fingers, and apparently each person's unique. Not that long ago, it came out that these things actually existed back then.
Yeah, these biometric scanners where you put your hand over it and it shines light through the bones in your hand and it measures the length of each one. Yeah, that came out to be true.
That's pretty impressive, in my opinion.
Element 115 appeared to be a real thing. It appeared to be something that they're still trying to isolate.
Yeah,
right?
I believe they synthesized a couple atoms of it.
Yeah. So it's just it's so close to the truth that it's so believable,
Yeah.
And that's sort of the antithesis of all of this phenomenon, is that it's so believable just because we see how technology evolves. We see how far we've come. Do we really believe that we fucking went to the moon in the 60s and now the technology was lost and like we can't make it back
We've
there. Oh my
stalled,
god,
yeah.
there's no way. It's like what
That's
the hell, dude?
impossible.
It's yeah, but at the same time, believing that the government, as inefficient as it is, that they're able to keep these secrets for so long, it's like, come on, man.
That's why I think it's not government. It's private. By who? I don't know. Well, I mean, like I said, it could be government, but if it was
Right.
government, then eventually we could get in as the public.
Now, just to tie a bow on this Bob Lazar thing, after watching one video on YouTube, going through the sources that this guy put out there, it definitely shattered my Bob Lazar illusion. However, it's like at the end of the day, you know, he goes and does these conferences. He does the Joe Rogan Experience. He doesn't take any money for doing a lot of these things. If there's money that he's paid, he gives it to local science foundations and
That's
things like that.
fantastic.
It's like, what? Nobody has, the one thing that nobody has answered is like, what the fuck is his motivation for doing all of this? Like, he doesn't like to be interviewed. He doesn't like being in the public eye. He's been fucking harassed by these UFO enthusiasts that camp out on his lawn and stuff like that. You know,
since 89 or 90, he's been silent up until this documentary came
Right.
out, or that interview he did on that YouTube, on Secure Team, the YouTube channel.
yeah. But like, why now, and why perpetuate this story if he, you know, if he really has nothing to gain from it? That's the big mind fuck for me, man. It's like, I want to believe that it's real, because it seems, and I'm such a pea-brained idiot when it comes to science, but I want to believe that it's possible. But it's hard because there's so many fucking shysters out there, and there's so many.
98% of the stuff you hear about this phenomenon is total bullshit. Now, to go through all that bullshit and find the truth is almost impossible. So you just have to look, I guess, for patterns, right? And stuff that, even as I'm saying this, it's difficult. Like I was going to say, you have to just find stuff that seems just out of the ordinary, which Bob's is. Which all of this stuff is out of the ordinary to begin with. My whole thing with Bob is I honestly think he's completely telling the truth. He's been this consistent for 30 years. Where does this motivation come from? Maybe just because he's a scientist. He wants people to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's all this stuff about his personal background that kind of, it does hurt his credibility a little bit. I mean, the fact that he was also arrested for...
Oh, I know. Yes. Like a brothel.
Yeah, for running an illegal brothel.
You know, he had to testify as his name, and then he had to provide like his work history or something, and they couldn't find it.
That's right.
And that was after all this shit happened.
Why couldn't they find any of this? You know, the argument is, from the conspiratorial side, is that, you know, they were trying to discredit him. They deleted all of his educational records and his work history and all of this. Now they came out and showed that he indeed did work at Los Alamos Research Laboratory, but no one was able to prove his education.
Checking out Lazar's credentials proved to be a difficult task. He says he earned degrees in physics and electronics, but the schools we contacted say they've never heard of him. He also said he worked as a physicist at Los Alamos National Lab, where he experimented with one of the world's largest particle beam accelerators, a half-mile-long behemoth capable of generating 700 million volts. Los Alamos officials told us they had no records of a Robert Lazar ever working there. They were either mistaken or were lying. A 1982 phone book from the lab lists Lazar right there among the other scientists and technicians. A 1982 clipping from the Los Alamos newspaper profiled Lazar and his interest in jet cars. It, too, mentioned his employment at the lab as a physicist. We called Los Alamos again. An exasperated official told us he still had no records on Lazar. EG&G, which is where Lazar says he was interviewed for the job at S4, also has no records. It's as if someone has made him disappear.
Well, they're trying to make me a non-person.
Explain. You called where?
Well, the schools that I went to, the hospital that I was born at, past job.
I mean, throughout ufology, people that have gotten onto something have absolutely been discredited and gone to their family and stuff too.
It's just so easy to discredit people when you hear the term ufologist or
Exactly.
UFO researcher. And I'm going to be completely honest with you. You, a couple years ago, you're still looking into all this stuff with UFOs and that sort of thing. And I was the one recently that said, hey, let's talk about it. And you're like, I haven't talked about this stuff in years. But back then you gave me these like 3-hour long documentaries to watch. And I kind of rolled my eyes. I'm like, oh my God, this again. You know,
yeah.
That's the way I felt. And
It's common, man.
It's the implications behind it that there's people that are so passionate to prove that it's real. They're not looking at it from both sides. It's that, it's that you immediately say that you believe in UFOs and people roll their eyes and they say, oh, great. Here's another crazy asshole going to try to tell me that aliens are real. But it's the technology behind it. Like you said, that's
the main thing. Yeah. That fascinates me.
Mm-hmm. Because little gray men, being abducted, being probed, all these other things, it's like that's a little bit harder to grasp.
Yeah, and I've dove into that. Trust me.
It's like, where's the proof? Where's the evidence? It's so hard.
Well, that's the problem. There is none because it's so protected. It's like, to me, the two biggest questions that humans have, or at least in my opinion, are what happens when we die and are we alone?
Sure.
Meaning, are there aliens? That's like the two biggest questions.
Yeah. Are we really at the top of the food chain when it comes to at least brain power? Are we the most intelligent beings in the universe?
Especially if these craft came from an ET civilization.
Yeah. And some of the arguments for this is, well, look at how long it took us as intelligent beings to get where we are with technology. Maybe on another planet with
yeah,
life.
They started ahead just naturally. That's just
their technology is based off of some sort of theoretical element that doesn't exist here. And our technology is based off of essentially fossil fuels, oils, plastics.
Yeah. Maybe they don't have that.
Yeah. Maybe they have something else. That's why
that's entirely possible.
That's why their technology looks different. Does that sound so crazy? I don't think it sounds so crazy to say that.
Not at all. Not at all. If the universe is truly infinite, there are infinite possibilities. That's how I like to think.
Yeah, man.
And it just seems completely possible to me. Actually, not just possible.
Probable.
Guaranteed, in my opinion, that we are not the only ones. And I'm going to say, in this galaxy, quote me on that one. Jot it down.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. Please don't.
In this galaxy, there's intelligent life. Yeah. Well, we've been looking for it forever. What is the isn't it SETI? The search for extra. What does SETI stand for?
Search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Maybe?
Yeah. Search for
that sounds right to me.
Search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
Oh, that was it.
Yeah. SETI.org.
Oh, yes.
They've been kind of scanning the frequencies in space, trying to search for, signatures and sounds and things that could possibly be coming from other planets.
Well, let's go to the Zeta Reticuli. Let's go there.
Yeah, that was the Bob Lazar claim, right? That's where he said that
shit that he was reading at S4. He was being briefed on. Apparently, these craft came from the Zeta Reticuli star system. It's in this galaxy, isn't it? Or is it not? I don't understand space. I'm not even going to pretend like I
Me either.
do.
Listen, we're both just people that are curious about technology and the possibility that there is something more advanced out there, whether it be the origins coming from our government, from a private enterprise, from the stars, who the hell knows? But just look up in the sky at night and tell me that there isn't something else out there. I think you're crazy.
That's a big problem. No one's looking up anymore. We're looking down at our phones.
Yeah.
People need to start getting curious. Look up for a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's so much out there. It's not just your phone. Drop the phone. You become almost meaningless. It's not to be a negative thing.
No, man. Hey, listen. Preach, brother.
Yeah, it's so fascinating how we on this tiny fucking planet in the solar system are here and no one is looking up, being just fascinated by that. In the grand scheme of things, we mean nothing, to what's happening in space. And
Yeah.
All these stars, like, dude.
It can be incredibly demoralizing to know that your life is not necessarily that meaningful in the grand scheme of things, right? Does that mean that you should make the most of it? No. In fact, it should motivate you to do more, to try to make a bigger impact.
More.
Yeah. And look at things from a curious mindset. Don't just do the thing where you search Google for what you believe. Search for the opposite. It's really hard to do. When I was trying to
no one does that.
When I was trying to quote unquote research this stuff, it was so hard to find opposing arguments to even just like Bob Lazar. There's so many people that just flat out believe him. And fair enough. The guy has a very compelling story.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, even these those Navy pilots, they have a very compelling story as well.
I mean, yeah, if anything, they're the most credible.
Right.
Because they're military.
Exactly.
You know, they're trained in the equipment that they're seeing this shit on.
There's a whole industry of people, however, that profit off of the curiosity of others. I mean, just look at Roswell, New Mexico. This is the town where a lot of people flock to. It kind of became this like tourist trap for UFO enthusiasts. There's a museum. There's like a freaking McDonald's in the shape of a flying saucer and all this stuff, you know. It just makes everybody kind of look crazy, you know. I mean, hell, one of my favorite skateboard brands back in the
Workshop.
Alien Workshop had the most badass freaking logo.
No, I think I had an Alien Workshop board when I was younger.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
My cousin gave me a hand-me-down like Alien Workshop T-shirt. I think that was like the only thing I ever had, but I always wanted more.
Hell yeah,
I thought it was
alien,
so cool.
dude. Yeah, the little gray.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get more specific.
Little gray.
They have identities, Dan.
That's right, man.
They are.
And you know, I watched X-Files growing up. I was full.
Who didn't watch that shit?
I was full into it, man. I was full into it for the entertainment. You know, I grew up in a very small town, and the implication that there is something magnificent out there beyond this. I had to use my imagination as a kid, you know. So so reading books about UFOs and seeing the X-Files for the first time and all of these things, it was just fascinating to me as a kid. You know, I really wanted to believe that really the aliens exist. As I got older, I kind of moved past the belief in aliens, but I was always curious about the technology behind it. And here we are today, man. Here we are today with the internet and with just these stories that get spider webbed in all sorts of directions.
Oh my!
It's like, how do you know?
You almost can't.
Yeah. You just can't know what's true and what's not. You can see somebody puts something out, it gets debunked. Another person puts something out, that's debunked. And it goes back and forth between the people who, I think that there's two types of people that are truth seekers and people that are just locked into their beliefs.
And maybe that's why the government hasn't heavily stepped in on all these ufologists, because there is so much bullshit out there. It's like, so they're looking at it like, most of it's false, so they're gonna believe whatever.
It's better to leave the truth kind of obfuscated behind all of these layers of bullshit.
That makes more sense to me.
Yeah, because if you look at it from a national defense perspective, you don't want your secrets coming out. You don't want the quote unquote enemy to know what you're capable of. You want it to be more of a theoretical possibility. So how about this? To close this off, this is really fun, actually. I'm going to link you to this, and I don't know if you've heard about it yet. Now, if there's something that people want us to talk about next time, if there's some phenomenon that you've seen that you'd like us to, because we didn't even go into the Phoenix Lights, we didn't go into black triangles, we didn't go into the that forest in Germany, I think it was.
Oh yeah, anything. Let us know. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, and supposedly somewhere in New Jersey is some of the most UFO sightings anywhere. Anyway,
or like
the
secret
Operation Paperclip
bases in Antarctica, where all the Nazis went.
All these things. I mean, we're just kind of laying the groundwork
giving you ideas
here. Let me know if you're going to sign up. Thousands of people have taken a Facebook pledge to storm Area 51 to see them aliens.
They're not going to see shit but some military planes. I guarantee it.
So over 300,000 people have signed on to a Facebook event, pledging to raid Area 51 in Nevada in a quest to see them aliens. The event, called Storm Area 51, They Can't Stop All of Us, is inviting users from around the world to join a Naruto run, a Japanese manga-inspired running style featuring arms outstretched backwards and heads
that
forward.
part of it
into
is
the
real. I thought that was a joke. I read that somewhere else. Oh
This is
no,
on
they're gonna
fucking
Naruto
CNN.
run
Okay,
the whole way there.
Dude.
I mean, I might be down just to do the
I'm
run.
looking at
I'm just kidding.
I'm looking at the Facebook. I'm looking at the Facebook event.
It better be live streamed just so I can see like 300,000 people in Naruto running all the way there.
Here's the details. I'm reading this off of the Facebook event. I might just join. We will all meet up at the Area 51 Alien Center tourist attraction and coordinate our entry. If we Naruto run, we can move faster than the bullets. Let's see them aliens.
Oh, that's the best thing I've ever heard.
I can't believe I'm just gonna click.
So many of my friends have clicked going. What the fuck? I mean, I'm not gonna click going just because the government's going now.
Come on.
Shit posting because I'm in shambles. That's who's hosting it. Maybe they want to die. That's why they want to go there. It's either going to be the greatest takeover in U.S. history or the biggest mass grave in U.S. history. Or it'll just the biggest meme
I
ever.
wonder
if it's actually going to I really want it to happen. I want people to show up. Well, no,
okay,
I don't
want people to die though. So hopefully they have some kind of perimeter security.
I guarantee they know about it.
In this day and age, if anything's been proven more than anything, it's like people are super serious. Some people go there super serious. I wonder if they'll do the Naruto run thing though.
Like, I can't believe that part is actually real. That makes it. Now I'm interested because of that. Honestly,
there's more to this story that's developing. You know, our president has spoken publicly about UFOs. This is something that really hasn't been in the public view for quite a while. It comes up maybe once every presidential cycle. There'll be like a little joke that comes out. But these are, you know, with the Navy pilots that came out with these videos and stories about sightings. Hell, who knows where these stories are going, man. But it's just impossible for us to wrap our heads around everything. What I would love to see is just people taking the technology more seriously and looking at it from that side rather than it speculating on, because you could speculate till you're blue in the face and never come up with any sort of resolution.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You know.
Well,
so any final thoughts on what's happened recently and what your outlook is for the next few years? What do you think?
As far as thoughts, I mean, my thoughts on any of this could branch out into a million different ways. So I'm going to try to not do that.
It's basically, it's hard for you to say where any of this is going. There's been so many other things. Preparing for this episode was just anxiety ridden because there's so many freaking things to read, and not having going from basically zero to now is too much. We didn't even talk about the government program that existed that was investigating UFOs. Do I have any closing thoughts? My closing thoughts are that I guess I'm kind of reinvigorated in my curiosity in the subject. You know, it's easier now to be curious because we keep getting reminded. There's these news stories that come out all the time. I think that my Google search algorithm is permanently tainted now. So anytime I try to search anything, it's going to try to come up with all of these things that further cement my beliefs. So I got to be really careful, which is more like kind of tongue in cheek. I definitely nowadays do try to see things from both sides when it comes to these, especially very hypothetical situations. But it's a fun topic to look at, and the Netflix documentary that Bob Lazar has out there, kind of watch it, take it with a grain of salt. Maybe try to. I'm gonna put some sources and stuff in the show notes for people to read.
And if I can find that main the Bob Lazar video, like the main one that we all know about, that'd be a great one to link for y'all to watch.
The one from 1989.
Yeah, not the one with his blacked out face. The one where you stand right in front of the camera telling you, that's pretty incredible.
I don't know how to close this thing out, but I wanted to say thanks for talking to me about this. I know that maybe when I first approached you with this, I'm not sure how you felt about it, but if you think about it from the perspective of just the fact that anything is possible and that who knows where technology is going. I mean, from that side of it, it doesn't seem so crazy.
I agree.
Yeah, man. So, where can people find you if they want to chat with you?
Well, Twitter is probably Twitter and Twitch. So on Twitter and Twitch, I'm at Adamfellow, all one word. I'm very active on Twitter, even though I don't tweet too often. I'm on there way too much. It's unhealthy.
Send them some tweets about UFOs.
Oh my God, please, and we'll talk about it. You know?
Keep the conversation going.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks everybody for listening, and I'll see you next time. Special thanks to Danknet for helping me find an obscure interview that was buried somewhere under about 100 Jeremy Corbell videos. You can find a link to his video in the show notes, as well as probably too many videos and articles that I consumed in preparation for this episode. All of this is found on our website at pod.co/emotive. Music in this episode is from the talented Data Rebel. I am your resident skeptic, Dan Dahlstead. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with your friends. The best way for me to grow at this stage is through word of mouth, so do it right now. You can find us on Twitter and Instagram at Emotive Podcast, and my personal Twitter is at orangesherbet. Next week on the show, Herbug will be back to tell the story of how he and everyone in Hawaii thought a ballistic missile was headed their way. Thank you all for listening, and I hope to see you in the next episode.